What's up, guys? We're back with a NECA Toys review, jumping into a line that, well, I didn't really get started on correctly because I didn't review the first figure, but I got my hands on Thailog in the Gargoyles line, so we are going to take a look at him, and it's sort of like I'm taking a look at Goliath because they're mostly the same figure. Now, of course, this is a Ultimate style figure, so it gets the Ultimate style package treatment. It is, again, just like Goliath, in a massive box. This thing is absolutely huge. We've got some stellar artwork by Tristan Jones on the front here. You've seen his stuff recently with a lot of the Lost Tribe from Predators. So you've got an artwork of Thailog on the front, you got product shots on both sides, and then a bunch of product shots on the back of the box. But in typical Ultimates fashion, for an Ultimate style figure, you get the flap with the product shot, the big one on the inside here, and then the window showcasing the figure and all the stuff this guy comes with. So let's do it. Let's pull him out and take a look. And here we go, out of the package, our Thailog figure. It's Goliath spelled backwards, except only not really, but this is our clone of Goliath in a nifty navy blue color scheme. It's mostly a repaint. There are, of course, changes to this figure, but it's basically that same figure. So if you've got Goliath, you kind of know what's going on with this figure right out the gate. And like I said, I didn't review Goliath mostly just because it just didn't line up at the time because of so much stuff going on. He came during the move, and that just didn't work for me. But I do like that figure. I do have a lot of problems with that figure, though, and I have a lot of the same problems with this guy. It ultimately comes down to the fact that this is a really cool property that is finally getting really cool collector toys that are just incredibly impractical in many ways. Like, it's a crazy figure. There's so much going on with this guy, and it's like the same thing that everybody's going to say. It's that it's an awesome figure, but the wings are just so nuts. And I know we're getting wing capes, but they're kind of different when it comes to how they're going to make the figure work. So we'll maybe talk about that in here a bit. But let's see what this guy can do. See how he moves around. I'm actually going to take the wings out for when we do this for now, just for ease of use, so I don't knock anything down while we're doing this, because honestly, I kind of like the way they look without the wings. I would never display them this way, but I kind of like that look. So we'll move these aside for now, and just talk about the figure itself before we go back to the wing situation. So we've got a head here that is pretty much locked in this position when he's forward. He can look down really good though. You've got some tilt side to side. You've got rotation, but the hair is definitely going to get in the way. The hair also does get in the way when it comes to the wings too. So there's definitely a problem or a situation there. Arms out at the shoulder, normal stuff there. Rotation. You've got your bicep swivel. We've got double jointed elbows. You've got hinges and rotation at the wrist. We've got a diaphragm cut here, which allows him to go forward surprisingly good. Backwards, pretty good. Tilt side to side. It's also a slight rotation point, and then you've also got a waist twist down there too to help move him. But he does have a lot more movement at the torso than I really expected this figure was going to, at least at first. So that's cool. We've got the newer style hips on this guy, so his legs go out. It's the ball socket system. Kind of squeaky. They go forward. They go backwards really good. You can twist up there. We've got a single jointed knee, but it's pretty decent. He's a digitigrade kind of character, so there's nothing too crazy about that. That's pretty normal. You've got a little bit of twist there too for some swivel. You got rocker, and you've got hinges at the top of the ankle, the foot, top of the foot, and then you've got toe articulation, which is fully ratcheted. So he goes backwards and forwards really good. And then, of course, he rests on those toes. And then you've also got your tail back here, which goes up and down, twists. So you peg it in yourself. You have to pop this guy in. I didn't need any heat for that. Pop it in. It'll rotate. And then you've also got your hinge up and down, and then it's a bendy wire. So it comes super straight. I mean, this thing's really long, but then you can get it in a pretty good poses. I mean, it curves really, really nicely. And then, of course, if you need it, like I'm going to right now probably, you can use it to help support him, because it is a little tricky at times to get this guy to pose with the wings in particular, because he's definitely He's just a different kind of figure because of the fact that he rests on those toes. But he is really, really well articulated. They move very nicely. They're very fluid, had no issues, no need for heat, none of that stuff. The real, I don't know, thing that comes into the articulation is when you reintroduce the wings. And I'm not sure that's a surprise to anyone. So we'll pop these back in. And they just peg into the back. So there's one. And here is two. And they are ratcheted, but you can see here to start with, the head is a little bit pushed forward because of how the hair sits on top of those wings. So he isn't as neutral as he would be otherwise, which is kind of an annoyance to me. So they swivel inside there, and then, you know, it's really, really tight. But you can get them to, if you didn't hear that loud enough, they can go backwards as well. So there is some play in them, but the hair is going to get in the way. So like for my purposes, they're basically just going to be neutral at any times. But when you do that, of course, you've got to make sure that you've got the shelf space. I really, really, really wish that these were hinged. Like, I just don't understand why they're not. They also stick out from the back really, really weirdly. I don't like the way that looks aesthetically. I was really hoping that these would just end up being like Mythic Legion's wings, you know, with a hinge at the top, and you can fold them down and kind of drape themselves behind the figure. I don't necessarily need the wing capes. That's a really cool thing, but it's like one extreme to another. It's either you've got wings that are fully extended and they're going all over the place, or you're going to have these capes that we're going to get eventually that completely envelop the character, and if they're plastic, are likely going to really hinder the way they can move. So it's like a double-edged sword. I think this looks awesome, and it's a really cool piece visually, but it is still pretty impractical when it comes to a figure. And I know a lot of folks out there, I mean, anytime I post anything about this, I don't have the space for these because of how these things have to be displayed. They can be moved a little bit when you articulate them, but it's probably not enough. If you don't have enough space horizontally, you probably don't have another 8 inches vertically. Now, my gripes about practicality aside, because, you know, let's be honest, it is a very awkward and impractical kind of figure. It's like 18 inches wide. It's crazy. That aside, these figures do look really cool. I mean, we only have 2 so far. We have Goliath, and then we have Thailog here, which is, of course, a clone of Goliath. So he's like the perfect reuse, right? He is literally a clone. So they can easily get away with making this figure again and saying, well, that's what he is. He's a clone. Granted, he has other looks. He gets the armor and stuff like that. But I think he looks pretty awesome. Goliath is a great looking figure to begin with. The wings are incredibly impressive. They are super, super textured. So there's all kind of texture and detail over it, like scaly, veiny look and feel to them. The body, the musculature has a very realistic touch to it. I mean, that's more along the lines of what this is. It's certainly not an animated look. It is more of a realistic. I mean, it is and it isn't. Like, you know, it's obviously a gargoyle monster figure, but in more line of what it could possibly be if it were a real thing. It is more of a humanoid with, you know, very, very intense musculature, great vascularity, just a lot of muscular detail all over this guy. Tons of shading, so he's got that dark blue look, which would be kind of like a void if he didn't have the shading. So they gave him the black, and it's really well applied. It's in most of the musculature all over the figure to help bring out that sculpt and accent some of the smaller little details, like sculpted veins and like muscle striations, specifically in the abs and the pec region. So I do like that. And then, of course, you know, it's just the overall shelf presence, the size, and attention to detail here. He very much exudes this demonic presence on your shelf. Most of that is due to the fact that that's kind of what he is. But this color scheme, the wings, and the overall like intense sculpt on this guy really works, really sells the idea here. He's got this huge shock of white hair, which definitely stands out against him. There is there's some dry brushing in there to bring out some of that sculpt. It's kind of like a light blue dry brushing to bring it out. And then, of course, he does have this particular head sculpt, which has the bright red eyes, and then the kind of devious look to him. Like, he's not smiling, but he's not snarling. He's got a little bit of a devious look to him, and you can see a little bit of those teeth poking through. So I really think the looks fantastic. Everything about this figure is very unique. Well, unique in the sense that you don't have much else like this. you might have a purple one, but you don't have many other figures that look like this. And I think it's one of those things that if you've got the shelf space for this, like, it's easy to have this become a focal point on your shelf because of those wings, because of how just humongous they are, how detailed they are, and then the fact that this guy is just kind of exuding this really cool factor. It's a really nice looking figure that has a lot of plastic involved with it. Now, as far as accessories goes, Thailog has a decent amount. I mean, I suppose he has more than a decent amount, because one of these accessories is beyond ridiculous. In the same way that these wings are like incredibly huge and in many ways impractical, one of his accessories is the exact same situation. So to start with, we've got some extra hands. We've got some fists for him. So he's got these sort of style pose clawing style hands on him in the box. You got some fists. And then we've got a trigger finger hand to hold the gun. And this one's pretty cool. So this gun is like specifically meant to go right into this hand. Like, it fits perfectly. It sits really, really well. But this gun is more than just a gun. It is the way that you utilize this crazy accessory. So this end piece pops off, like the canister at the end pops off, and you attach it to the end of this effect part. And then you peg this monstrous effect, which is at least a foot long, into this gun. And it goes in like this, and you've got yourself this ridiculous gun. I mean, this thing is humongous. It is, however, an awesome effect part. Like, this thing is so cool. Look at this burst effect on the end. There's tons of paint and shading all over it, like this spiral effect. This end part here, where it's the canister is actually exploding out of it. So there's a lot of oomph and like impact with this. I think it's really cool. It is pretty heavy. Like, it's not super heavy. I've had some issues with him sort of keeping it up. Basically, like, it might pop out of the end of the gun. But it's a really cool idea. Like, I think it's again, it's kind of impractical. It's very, very, toy photography friendly, I'm sure. Like, this looks like something people are going to have a field day with. But the paint, the sculpt on it, the idea behind it, very, very cool. But again, I mean, it is a foot long. It's crazy just how much is into this one specific thing for this guy. So you've got your big demon gargoyle with the gun and this monster effect. And then the last thing we get is this briefcase here, which honestly, on its own, if it were just a briefcase, it would look really good. It's got a great finish to it, nice metallic silver with the black matte finish. But it opens up, and you've got a ton of money in there, which is all sculpted in, and then these keys that sit on top. And it's a really nice. It's sized really well. It pops shut, clamps closed, and you're good to go. So he can hold on to this, and it's a really cool idea. I think it looks good. It's very it's very nicely implemented. This is, I'm kind of gushing over this, but it's honestly one of the better briefcases of money accessories I think I've ever seen. So very good job there. So he does have a pretty decent amount of stuff. Like, it's not a ton when it comes to quantity, but when you get this out of the box, I mean, it's kind of a game changer. And then, of course, you have to assume the fact that, like, the wings are kind of an extra thing with this figure too. They're not specifically part of him. You have to add them on. So, like, all the plastic, when it comes to thinking about what's in this box as far as piece count and plastic, there is a ton of stuff in here. So yeah, overall, this is still a really cool figure, but the big caveat for me with this line is, and is likely always going to be, that they're kind of impractical. Like, they're very, very different figures. They're digitigrade figures, so they pose differently. They have humongous wings, so they take up a ton of shelf space. And then, like I said, we're going to get those wing capes later on, but it's two different things. You've either got these massive wings out, or you've got capes on them that are probably going to lock them down quite a bit. So it's kind of a give and take situation. But just at face value, they do look really cool. And if you can display them, if you have the room for these on your shelf, you're going to have a great focal point in your display, and we're getting the beginnings of what is going to be hopefully a very long-running line for folks who have just been missing out on Gargoyles toys for like 20 years. So that's going to do it for this look at the NECA Toys Thailog. Let me know what you guys think. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.